today's episode, I'm going to tell you the 4 checks an exercise needs to tick off in order for you to know whether it's worth doing and worth keeping in your training plan. As always, important, helpful stuff at the beginning of the video for all you who aren't going to hang around for the rest of the episode. The 4 things are, number 1, is it simple to scale? Can you easily add weight to it? Do you know what the weight is? Number 2, is there a good amount of stability? If the exercise is always going to be limited by a lack of stability, i.e. you're doing something on a Bosu ball, that's probably worth reconsidering. Number 3, does it take the muscles or the movement through a good range of movement? This might be due to the exercise itself. A rack pull is always going to be inferior in my mind to deadlifting from the floor because it intentionally limits the range of movement. But the lack of range of movement might be due to your own mobility or size or structure. If you're trying to build quadriceps, then a pendulum squat or a hack squat might be a better option than a back squat right now. And number 4, can you do it pain-free? You've got to make sure you're not force-feeding movements into your training program just because you feel like you have to do them. There are always alternatives, and I will happily point you in the direction of hundreds of them. You can always come back to an exercise. But you shouldn't be smashing back loads of painkillers every week just to get through a particular exercise. If an exercise ticks off those 4 boxes, then it's probably a good exercise and you can keep doing that. Now, for the rest of you, let's unpack this a little bit. Oh, by the way, if you're still here, make sure you're following, liking, subscribing, whatever is appropriate on the platform you're on. So, we've got our 4 checks. Let's break them down a little bit more. When I'm referring to your ability to scale an exercise, what I mean is that you can progress it easily and you also know what progress looks like. So in my mind, something like a resistance band is a legitimate training tool, but it's always going to be limited, or the issue is always going to be they don't really know what you're lifting. Like you can buy bands that tell you roughly how much force is being produced or how much resistance there is, but you never really know for sure. And so it's going to be hard to scale that. Whereas if you've got a barbell, a 2.5 kilo plate that you put on the end is always going to be 2.5 kilos. If you've got a machine, whatever it is that's really obvious in terms of the weight you're adding to it, that means it's really easy to scale or progress. If you're getting stronger, you'll put more weight on the bar or you'll do more reps with the same weight. Whereas a resistance band, it's hard to standardize that. You could have the same 3 resistance bands from the same 3 manufacturer, but they've been used slightly different amounts and they'll produce different levels of tension. You might stretch it a little bit further one week and therefore you're having to produce more force and you stretch it a little bit less. They're still good tools. I'm not saying not to use them, but I'm saying that they shouldn't be part of the foundation of your training program because you're never really going to know if you're progressing with them, or at least you're never going to know for certain exactly what the progression is. Whereas you can have a 500 gram plate at the gym, you can have a 1.25 kilo plate, you can have a 20 kilo bumper, and you know what that weight is and you know what the progression is. And so being able to very easily scale, to easily progress and track an exercise is important. The second one, I've got my notes here, not limited by instability. Now, I want to be clear, I'm not saying that having more stability inherently makes an exercise better, because otherwise we'd all just use machines. But I think there comes a point where it's fairly obvious that the exercise is always going to be limited by balance or instability. I use the example of a Bosu ball. It doesn't matter how strong your legs get, at some point the limiting factor on a Bosu ball exercise is the fact you're on a Bosu ball. And there will be some circumstances where that's okay. Maybe you're going through particular rehab drills, maybe you like certain exercises, it's cool. Like, I'm not going to tell you not to use it if you want to. Personally, I wouldn't even touch one, but hey, that's just the way I write programs, the way I train. But my point is, it's going to be really hard to progress certain exercises beyond a point because you're on this wobble board, because you're on this spongy surface. And so again, that's always going to be the block. You're going to get to a point where you're not going to be challenging your muscles any further, or your ability to produce force or produce power or endurance, because you're just on this wobbly surface. So a good amount of stability is essential. More stability isn't necessarily better. I don't think that pendulum squats or hack squats are better than back squats because they're more stable, because otherwise, like I said, we just use machines. But I do think that Bosu ball squats are silly and dangerous. The third thing, good range of movement. This is key. There are two factors that usually impact range of movement. The first is the exercise itself. If you're doing a rack pull, then you're always going to be restricting range of movement because the bar can only go to a certain point. And I think that it's a poor option for most people. I think it's an ego lift, to be honest, and I think that people are better off learning how to deadlift from the floor, or doing stiff-legged deadlifts, because you're going to work the muscles and the movement for a greater range of movement, which is important because the good stuff happens in the length and range. And so those are always going to be better options. You can still do rack pulls. Like, I'm not trying to tell you not to. Actually, no, I am. I am telling you that you don't need to do rack pulls. I can't think of anyone that really needs to do a rack pull when you can just deadlift with more range of movement. Even if it's not from the floor, you can work your way towards there. The second thing that impacts range of movement, however, is you as an individual potentially. You might have different limb lengths and structures. Some people fold up beautifully into the bottom of a squat, and some, who will remain nameless, don't. And so if you're looking to build your quadriceps using a squatting movement, then we want to work the quadricep muscles and load them through a big range of movement. So if you can't get a really deep knee bend, you might be missing out on some gains, and you might be better off in that instance going for something like a pendulum or a hack squat, where you can do a squatting movement through a bigger range of movement because the exercise just suits you better. It fits you better. It might be that your mobility improves over time. It might be that you want to keep training your mobility and training that exercise so that you can increase the range of movement. But generally speaking, if the issue you run into from a lack of range of movement is always the fact that your body type, your shape, your structure, your flexibility doesn't fit, then it's worth reconsidering that and either keeping that exercise in from a technique point of view, like you want to improve the range of movement, but you accept that you can't load it through a good range of movement now. Or just keep it in because you like it. If you like it, that's fine. But I'm just saying there are probably better options to build your training program around. And it's okay to say that, and it's okay to recognize that. The fourth thing is making sure it's pain-free. This is a fairly obvious one. It's not that an exercise is bad if it causes pain, because we all experience pain from different exercises. Some people can back squat to their heart's content, and some people it doesn't feel great. Like, there are exercises that for some reason hurt some of us. That doesn't make the exercise bad, because it's different for everyone. But what I'm getting at is, if one of the key exercises in your training program causes you pain, you need to stop. Like, you can't just keep smashing back painkillers. You can't keep gritting your teeth. You're not like some sort of like alpha male, grind bro, hustle 24/7 because you pick exercises that hurt. Like, if you've injured yourself and an exercise hurts that injury, stop doing that exercise. If an exercise always makes your hips feel like shit the day after, find an alternative, because that's the cool thing about the gym, is that there are dozens or maybe even hundreds of alternatives. And I'm fairly confident that if one variation of an exercise hurts, you can probably find a handful of variations of the same exercise that don't hurt. If a bench press hurts, you can try doing close grip, you can try doing incline, you can try doing decline, you could do dumbbell press, you could do a machine exercise, you can do a cable press. Like, there are always options, and I'm sure that even if some of them are still no good, there will be one that is, and then you double down on that. You can always come back and revisit the exercise that's hurting you right now. But please don't smash back loads of painkillers or feel like you have to go through a load of bad pain, not muscle pain, but like actual pain, in order to grow. And outside of those four things, I don't see that there's anything else that I would judge an exercise on. People talk about things like resistance profiles, they talk about converging chest presses. Like, I'm happy to hear those arguments, but I think fundamentally, so long as an exercise ticks those four boxes, you can load it and you like doing it, then keep doing it. It works absolutely fine. I think too many times we get caught up in the weeds of, is this a good exercise because of this very specific reason, rather than is this an exercise because of these four things. So just to recap, it's simple and easy to scale and progress, and you know what that looks like. You're not guessing how much weight there is in the exercise you're doing. Number two, it's not limited by a lack of instability. No, it's not limited by instability or a lack of stability. Number three, it provides a good range of movement for the movement itself or the muscles based upon you or the exercise. And number four, you're not in loads of pain doing it. That's it. That's today's episode. Make sure you like, subscribe, follow, comment if it was helpful, all that sort of stuff. Or don't, I suppose.